9 months ago, I purchased these awesome SN850s by Western Digital, and they've been awesome. Nothing but awesome. I'm so happy I bought these. And I have a lot of questions that are being asked because of some videos I made, so I'm going to answer them here. Let's jump into it. Welcome back to another video. My name is Nikos. Today we're talking about the SN850 from Western Digital. I purchased these about 9 months ago. They've been awesome for me. I was going to do a 1 year, and I'm still going to do a 1 year review. I'm going to be doing all similar tests to see if these have kept up and if there's been any issues along the way. And of course, I will be comparing them in similar fashion as before. Now, if you want to see the full review of those tests I did and how I compared them to the Samsung 980 Pro and of course the Sabrent drives, I will leave the links below. Please take a look at those and they will answer a lot of the questions I'm not going to be answering here. Now, these are more specific to the questions I've been getting since launching those videos. And yes, they have been similar in nature. Firstly, let's address, is there a heating issue with these? And the answer is, if you leave them like this, just put them in, yes, this is all they're going to do. They're going to overheat, and then you're going to ask yourself, well, why is it overheating? You need to use some kind of heat sink. Now, one of the setups I did in my computer were for a PCI slot. I got one of these heat sinks, and it was just like a little metal, nothing really, and it still does enough to keep it at a good temperature. This is the thermal pad that came with it. It came in a little kit, and literally, if you put a thermal pad on the front and on the back of the drive, when you insert it, that's all you really need. The actual metal that goes on top, it doesn't change it that much. I noticed like maybe 2 to 3 degrees, but I did get that Sabrent heatsink, and that is on one of my drives. It stays the same degrees. I never see it go over 70 degrees in the computer, and it stays the same with the rest of the setup, including the one on the motherboard. So when you do have on your motherboard, you do have the heatsink plates, you can just put that on. Make sure you put 2 thermal pads on there. They're really cheap and you won't have any issues. Now, the question about what is the long term, what has been happening over the 9 months? Have you had any caching issue? Nothing. I've had nothing. It's received a couple updates. Don't know why. There were no issues. This has been doing great. I've not had any issues whatsoever. The transfer rates are still maintaining where they should be. There were some firmware updates with the AMD system and of course the motherboard, and I saw some better efficiency numbers go up. I'm still doing some tests on those so I can give you more concrete, but now the PCIe, so the M.2 on the PCIe lines and the M.2 on the PCIe, on the CPU line is running almost as close as it can be. So I'm not too worried about the speeds anymore. I'm pretty happy. However, it is still that change that you're like, and in certain areas where I'm still testing and trying to figure that out. Now, overall, 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes, people have asked me, hey, if there's no heating issue and I want to just load up on these, what should I get because of, workflow? Now, if you're a gamer, okay, if you're a gamer, you're not going to have any issues with the caching. Do not worry about caching from any drive. You shouldn't be worried about that. Now, there are some drives that do cause problems, yes, but you're not going to have that issue if you're just going to use a Windows drive and you're off to the races. Now, people have complained about the Sabrent just like dying off within like 2, 3 months, 6 months or whatever. And that might just be a manufacturing thing. I don't know, but there was caching issue with those drives. Now, my testing was with my workflow, and this is where I made these videos, and people have been asking me, well, what about this idea of workflow? And I made it because I am transferring like 500-600 gigs a day. And I can't afford to have caching issues. I saw it with the Sabrent, I saw that with the Samsung, and that was problematic. I have 2 1 terabytes and I have 1 2 terabyte. I wanted to get another 2 terabyte and replace one of the 1 terabytes. However, it wasn't in the cards because I decided to go buy some camera gear. So I was like, whatever, do I really need it? What I do is I connect the 1 terabyte for Windows, and then I put my software on there, and then I have another terabyte as a spare drive where I move projects on there, and then at the same time I move them on the 2 terabyte, which is connected to Google, and then everything's uploading, and I have 2 backups while everything uploads, and then I will work off a second copy off that Google Drive. So this is basically me moving everything online. I want it online. That's going to go and it's going to connect to my Synology box, and it's going to do another backup, and we're covered in case anything should happen. It's the worst thing in the world if something happens. Now, at the same time, if I just had a laptop, I would be doing something similar, except I'd have an external drive, which is what I would do with the 1 terabyte. Okay, I would just keep that and make an external drive, throw it in one of those fast NVMe cases, and you're off to the races. So I just rhymed. Okay, so the idea here is very simple. Do you need 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte if you're video editing or doing a lot of work? 2 terabyte will do you better because we're moving into the 4K land. We're getting into bigger data. Then yes, but you only need 1 terabyte for your Windows. That's it. So if you're going to get 2 drives and you're going to use them in that way, 1 terabyte is better than 500 gigabytes for your drive on Windows. Why? Because Windows is going to use up that drive with virtual memory and everything else it does. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but it's going to use it up. So if you have your drive loaded up with about 200 gigabytes, and then sometimes you transfer stuff over, that collects. And of course, the drives move slower when they have 500 gigabytes versus the terabyte versus the 2 terabyte. On that note, that caching issue for the Samsungs, it's not like people have told me that they don't find it with the 2 terabyte, but the 1 terabyte, they still do. So that is because of how the 2 terabytes and the 1 terabytes are built and the amount of caching that it can handle and it can recycle through. So we have to look at this idea overall and how Windows is managing everything and how we are actually using the drives. Workflow is critical here. So in my opinion, would I go based on what I hear to get a 980 Pro, the Samsung one? Yeah, if it's a 2 terabyte. I haven't heard anything bad, but I haven't tested it. I haven't tested the bigger Sabrent drives. I tested the 1 terabytes. I tested the 1 terabyte of this one, and the SN850 did a great job with the 1 terabyte as the 2 terabyte. So I had to give it the win, and I had to go buy drives for me, so I had to make an executive decision there. Now, another question people ask me, Firecuda, okay, the 530. Is it better? Is it good? It's showing faster speeds. I have heard nothing but good news about that. However, I haven't tested it. I haven't bought it yet. So I don't know, but I've heard that it is good. And I was thinking about buying one, but I didn't see it on a sufficient enough sale for me to justify it and buy it over these to test it out. That's why I haven't tested it. Would I consider buying it? Yes. So what I did is I just loaded up a whole bunch of workflow files that I would do on a regular with different kind of files that average person, average Joe would use of, 30, 40 gigabytes, just random files when they're moving them. And I moved everything over and I moved everything back and I wanted to see how the caching is going to handle. My test, okay, was done in workflow style. So I would do that to the Firecuda. And that's it. I would do it to the Firecuda and I would test that out. So I would buy it from somewhere I can return it. Okay. And if I were you and you're really set on getting this Firecuda, I'm not sure what the appeal is for it. Like everybody's like, oh my God, the Firecuda, and I'm trying to figure it out, but I can't. So, but that's what I would be doing if I were anybody. Like I'm testing stuff out. People are like, oh, these drives. I've had comments on there. They're like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He didn't even buy the drives. And I'm like, I have them in my hands. I went and bought them with my own money to test them out because I'm building a rig and I'm putting everything together. I need my workflow to be full blast, and then I'm going to replicate this rig with employees that are going to be hired on. So I mean, what? So this is where sometimes I see that people aren't watching the whole full video, and then they go in the comment, and I look at it and I go, all right, how do I incorporate that in my videos a little bit better so that if somebody reads the comment, I don't really care about the person that made the comment. If somebody reads a comment, what I've noticed is people will read that comment and then they will go post another comment, and that comment will be like similar to that comment. And it's like, but in the video, and they want clarification because they're assuming that the other person watched the video and everything. So the Firecuda, like, I think it's a good drive. Yes, I think it's a good drive, but I haven't tested it, so I'm not sure. I've heard nothing but good things. Okay. On that note, people have asked me about the testing, and I always get a comment like, well, you didn't do the reviewer's regular testing. I don't care. I'm not a reviewer. I'm not a reviewer. I am testing real world scenarios. I could care less what Joe Smo is saying about the Samsung if I am sitting there getting stuck with my work because it's got a caching issue and they didn't bother to test it, or they didn't bother to test it more than like 3 hours or 6 hours that it took to take the test. I find problems 3 months, 6 months down the road, and this is why I want to do a full review of this. I want you guys to be aware of this because there's a lot of people talking and there's very little actual work on the testing when it comes to real world application. I'm a big boy here and I'm trying to get my work done. That's it. Okay. I've grown up. I'm not like, oh, it's a game and it's all fun. I'm spending 500, 300, 500 bucks. Come on. It's a lot of money. And I'm just trying to help out the average person that's in my scenario. That's it. That's it. Okay. If I'm looking at it at face value right now, that's the idea of my testing. It was literally, how do I make sure that I am happy with my purchase? And then I thought people would want to know about this in case they were building their rigs and they're working on stuff. That's it. Okay. I picked up the R6 and I can record for 30 minutes and then it's like, that's it in my studio. It was like 27 minutes. It was too hot or something, you know, and I'm like, oh, okay. I turned down the heat and I got, you know, another 5 minutes. And some guy online is like, oh, I can get an hour and 45 minutes. What? Tell me how. I'm still doing tests on the camera. I am disappointed. I am. Just because I watched a whole bunch of people talk about how it's not overheating anymore. So then I went and bought it like an idiot. So here is the thought process on that testing. Workflow, you got to look at it. You got to say to yourself, what is my workflow? And you got to look at the reviews based on your workflow and see if they're using a similar workflow. If they're not, then you're not going to have similar kind of results when you do get that drive, and you might have some issues. On another note, think about the warranty. So yes, Samsung offers, for me personally, one of the best warranties in the game, because you just take it back to where you need to take it to, where you bought it from, and they will deal with everything. And that was my experience. It might be different in different countries, but that was my experience. Where Western Digital, I bought extra warranty so the store can do that for me, because I don't want to deal with that sending everything over. But then when one of my other drives died, now that it corrupted, I sent it over, and I'll make a review about that and tell you a little bit about the story there. But I realized that I'm no longer going to bother with it, because I was like, I couldn't get my data off of it. And I'm like, I'm sending it to a company and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. And it really kind of bothered me. It bothered me. Now, on that, it was just client work that was kind of like just video shoots, and that was it. That was overridden several times, and there was nothing that that I was like confidential information that I was like, oh my God. It was just, you know, you're sitting there and you're like, it was just backups of certain videos that I made that I was like, I talked to the clients and I was like, hey, this is what happened with my hard drive. You know, that shoots on there. Are you okay with me sending it? They told me this and this and this is going to happen at the company, so it's all protected, but I don't know what could happen. And it's corrupted, but we don't know. And they were like, yeah, don't worry about it, and we're all good. So I confirmed with everything because I didn't want to deal with it. I'm not going to lose sleep over like $400 or $500. Okay, I'm not. Okay. That being said, that drive was only like $200-300, so we're good. So that is something you have to think about with the warranty, and you got to think about these drives. So if you're going and buying these drives, what is going to occur? I'm now looking at, you know, CF Express cards, because I'm thinking about getting the R5 now, and I'm saying to myself, well, what happens if something corrupts? You know, and what happens in that case? And how does that work with my workflow and all that? So I'm looking at companies that I can trust with my data should something happen. If they have a program where they make sure that everything is covered, and there's a couple companies out there, I'm doing all that research right now, but I keep watching these videos with people, and I guess nobody really thinks about this until something is occurring or something does happen. So that is something to think about in that manner. Now, security was another question that people are asking, and yes, there is drives out there. There are drives out there that offer 256-bit encryption, the AES 256. This drive does not. So you can't get that encryption on this drive. It's not meant for that, and they don't have that offer on this. I had to go and check through a whole bunch of scenarios with it, with the company, and they finally confirmed it for me after months and months of trying. I don't know why it took so long. But for everybody out there that's asking about that, they don't cover that in there. However, can you put security on it? Yes, you can put security on it. So if you need that security, then don't go for this drive, that period. Like, there's other drives out there, of course. But if you need it, need it. And 95% of the people out there do not need it, okay? And if you just put BitLocker on there or whatever other software, you'll be fine. It's just, you know, it's going to be like not 256. That being said, like, if you have secure stuff, then go get like a Samsung or something like that. So bottom line, okay? Like, now I have to think about it with my laptop. Should I put a drive like this in my laptop if I'm worried about the security? Okay, and go that route, because you got to look at it in that scenario. Now, the question that I get asked, and I think this is the last one, and I'll make another video with everything else in the 1 year, Gen 4 drive versus Gen 3 drive. I have a whole video on that. I will link that below, which one is and what it does and all that. So this is more of, what about the future? Gen 5 is coming out. And since Gen 5 is coming out, we really have to sit down and ask ourselves, should we be investing big money in the Gen 4 drives, okay? Now, the question is, what's going to happen with the Gen 5s, and how is that going to work through the next 2 years? In my opinion right now, it's based on need and want. If you need a drive right now, you go buy it. You need to buy it, that's it. I need to buy another drive, I'm going to go buy it. I don't have time to think about the future. Okay, the future's coming fast enough. Now I'll think about what kind of drive is good for the future, but I'm not going to be like, oh my God, let me just wait like another 6 months to find out. I'm doing this with the Canon R5. I'm thinking about it and I'm like, I don't know. Like, should I be waiting or not? Because the R5C is coming out. Okay, it's a little bit different, but then I'm looking at it as, I'm going to get the R5 and then I'm going to flip it. So if I can flip it, I don't just want to lose money on it, on the flip. Okay, that's it. The drive, I'm not going to be thinking the same way. It's a tool I need where I don't need to flip it, because if I go buy a Gen 5, everything new, I'm going to buy everything new. That's it. And if I need to use Gen 4 drives while everything gets building, then that's a different story. But Gen 5 is coming. The new stuff is coming through next year. You'll start seeing releases, but it's not going to be at that pinnacle stage where you're going to be sitting there going, I need to buy it right now. The prices are going to be more high because they're new, and we're going to have to wait for adoption to take over in order to get into a price point that you might be happy with. In which case, you're going to be looking at drives down the road where you're going to be saying, hey, it's going to be like 2 years down the road. And at that point, you know, you're still running at like 5, 6, 7,000 on the read and the write. Gen 5, what do you think it's going to do? Like, you know, how far off are you going to be where the software is going to come in and be like, I'm utilizing this full blast? I'm using Gen 4 right now, and when I go into Premiere, I've never seen it go over a gigabyte transfer speed. So I'm not utilizing ever the 3 or 5 gigabytes per second transfer kind of thing, right? So I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, what is the need overall? And I'm saying to myself, what am I seeing? So sit down on your software and open up your software and then do test runs and see how fast everything is moving. Do you need it? Do you really need it? Okay, and that's it. You know, do you need certain things? If you don't, then, right, by the time we get to that point where we're going to be thinking about Gen 5, and that will come, okay, the stuff is coming, we'll be having a different conversation, and that will be something that we have to take very seriously, because it's a lot of money flipping to the next generation of things. Now, the last thing I'm going to cover here, and I'm going to be very honest with everybody on the idea behind when looking at the Gen 4 drives versus the Gen 3 when it's coming towards your software. The software is not fully optimized. So I just said that I'm never seeing that gigabit speed come over, okay? The software is not fully optimized. Now, there are questions on there that are asking me, hey, for Windows 11, I don't have Gen 4. Will it be okay? And I'm just kind of like, where are you getting this? So I went searching, and there are literally videos out there where people are saying, you know, the Windows 11 needs, it's like resource and this, and this, and I'm just kind of like, what? Okay, I loaded Windows 11 on my system to test it out. Okay, it's great. It's great, but there's issues, and the issues aren't really, I think, from AMD. They kind of started fixing them, and Intel on my laptop is doing much better than the AMD was, but I had places where, moments where the software kind of like, you know, crashed on me. And it's not that you need a Gen 3 or Gen 4 drive. I'm running a Gen 3 drive on my Intel machine. Gen 3 will be fine. You don't need to worry about updating and going to something Gen 4 yet. You're good. Now, what is occurring? All the software is being updated, and I'm seeing this nonstop. And I go on websites like the Premiere to see what is happening with Premiere Pro, and they're like, there's no issues with Premiere Pro. Well, I'm finding issues. And guess what? Like, it's not how they work. There's a process they have to identify an issue, and that's that. We're not going to look at me and only me as a one-off, but I mean, I'm seeing issues here. I made a whole video on this. I will link that video below as well. And the idea here with these videos is that you're going to get more of information of Windows 11 and the issues I was having and why I'm not upgrading yet. I'm going to wait another 2-3 months. I'm going to see what's been happening. Have there been upgrades? What are people saying? How is it all fitting? Because it's just like, it's just tiresome to just switch every time, and then you don't never know if you're going to have issues. I had issues. Now, was it Gen 3, Gen 4 related? No, it wasn't. You don't need to worry about that. The Windows 11 will be fine on Gen 3. So Don't stress it. You don't need to worry about it. And you might be in that bracket where you have a Gen 3 system that's Intel. You were looking at AMD, you thought you're going to switch over, you didn't, and now the Gen 5 generation is going to come out, and that's the one you're going to jump on. So maybe you do want to buy a Gen 4 drive and be ready for that switch over in case the Gen 5 drives are expensive. But I mean, we haven't crossed that area yet. So I would not stress it. I would not be spending the money. For me, it's not an investment. It's a spend. I would stick to the Gen 3 drives. And people have asked me, what is my personal favorite Gen 3 drive? It is a Samsung 970 EVO. Period. Okay. The 970 line is awesome. I still have one that is running Mint. No issues in my laptop. I can't complain. So the overall experience, this has been it with me with drives, and this has been great. I'll make a video about the drive I sent back. I'm not gonna spoil the whole fun on that one. We're gonna go through just a scenario. I'm still doing some tests on it, so I know people have asked me about that drive because it's on the cheap end. But other than that, leave your questions, comments below. Of course, any discrepancies, love to hear them. And maybe I said something wrong in the video, like when I was trying to translate gigabits and gigabytes at that one moment. But leave them below, and I'll make sure to type in a correction there. And of course, check out these two videos.